Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. Welcome to the College of Marin. On behalf of Dr. Wayne Kuhn and the College of Marin Board of Trustees, we welcome you. And of course, the League of Women Voters. My name is Connie Sigenthaler. I'm the coordinator of tonight's event. I'm a member of the League and I work here at the college. The candidates here tonight are running for the Marin Board of Supervisors, Districts 2, 3, and 4. Tonight's event is moderated by the League of Women Voters of Marin County. This year, the League of Women Voters will celebrate 100 years of following a mission to empower voters and defend democracy. Hosting and moderating candidate forums is an important part of their vision of a democracy where every citizen has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. The League of Women Voters is strictly nonpartisan. We never support or oppose individual candidates or political parties. As a matter of courtesy, please turn off all electronic devices. Unauthorized videos are not allowed because the FCC requires that a forum must not be edited and must be broadcast in its entirety, either live or reasonably soon after it takes place. The League wants to ensure that information is not manipulated to create false or misleading impressions. Candidates have agreed not to use or edit the recording of this forum for campaign purposes. A little housekeeping, bathrooms are located out in the lobby. We encourage our audience to submit questions by writing them on the index cards that you find on your seat. Simply raise your hand. Someone will be along to collect your card and deliver them to the question sorters. I would now like to introduce our forum moderator for the League, Lori Nardone.
Thank you. Okay. Can you all hear me? Yes. Okay, good. This will be a bit long, but bear with me. Okay, welcome. And thank you all for being here tonight for the Marin County Supervisors Candidate Forum for Districts 2, 3, and 4, sponsored by College of Marin. I'm Lori Nardone of the League of Women Voters of Marin County, and I'll be your moderator. And with me are League members Robin Dietrich as our timekeeper, and Lynn Dooley and Sue Ream as the question sorters. The League of Women Voters is a trusted membership organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We do not endorse or oppose any candidates or political parties. In addition to promoting voter education, the League participates in advocacy for issues and may take positions on issues that arise in ballot measures. In order to assure impartiality and neutrality, League team members have no connection with the candidates. It is also our policy that team members not live in the districts the candidates represent, which is the case for Robin and Lynn, but for total transparency, I want to disclose that Sue and I do live in District 2. However, since that race is uncontested, the League waived that requirement in order that we might participate tonight. So tonight's event is a bit different in that we have candidates representing 3 different races, the Board of Supervisors for Districts 2, 3, and 4, and there is 1 seat for each district. Some of the candidates here tonight will not be on your March 2020 ballot. You will only see the candidates from the district in which you live, whether it's 2, 3, or 4. And if you live in districts 1 or 5, no supervisor races will be on your ballot. There are district maps on display if you are unsure of the district in which you live. And even though these candidates represent different districts and geographical areas in the county, there are county-wide issues that they can all address. Ultimately, even if a candidate is not in your district, they will still play a role in the decision-making of the Board of Supervisors as a whole. So tonight's candidates are, for District 2, which is uncontested, we have Katie Rice. District 3 has 3 candidates for 1 seat, and they are Jack Kenny, Stephanie Moulton-Peters, and Bill Bailey. And for District 4, we have 2 candidates, Dennis Rodoni and Alex Easton Brown. So let me explain how the roles of the timekeeper and the question sorter, what they do. To assure that everyone stays within the allotted time, our timekeeper will hold up easy-to-read cards fully in the candidate's view, signaling their remaining time, for instance, 30 seconds. When time is up, she will hold up a stop sign, at which point the candidate should complete their sentence, and I am the official hook for this process. I want to assure you that the question sorters do not censure the questions, but they rather screen the questions to avoid duplication and anything inappropriate. If you don't recognize your question, it might have been combined with other questions on the same topic. And please note that Community Media Center of Marin, CMCM, is broadcasting tonight's forum live on Comcast Channel 30. A gavel-to-gavel production will be rebroadcast on CMCM's Channel 30, as well as on the League's website at marinlwv.org. Audience release notices are posted around the room advising that your presence as a member of the audience during the filming constitutes your permission for the League of Women Voters of Marin County to use your likeness on the air in any forum and as often as they deem appropriate and desirable for promotional or broadcast purposes. This is where you smile. Before we get started, a quick review of a few ground rules. If you haven't already done so, please take a moment to silence your cell phone or anything else that makes noise. Because we're a strictly nonpartisan organization and follow Federal Election Commission rules for candidates, no campaign material is permitted inside the forum. No t-shirts, no buttons, other than the League, to maintain neutrality. And most importantly, we expect candidates and audience members to remain civil and courteous throughout. So what we're requesting is that the audience will not make or yell comments or applaud individual candidates' answers. Let us use this as an opportunity to listen to and to learn from all of our candidates. I'd like to remind everyone that the candidates in College of Marin have agreed to participate under the League guidelines set for this forum. Each candidate has been invited to make a 2-minute opening statement, and after that, the candidates will each have 1.5 minutes to answer each question. And to be fair, I will rotate the order in which they respond to the questions. For opening statements, we will begin with Katie Rice and go down the row in the order in which they are seated.
Okay. Can you all hear me? Is this going to move? No. Okay. Are we good? All right. So good evening, and it's really a pleasure to be here, and thank you, League, for including me in the candidates forum. And there may not be a lot of people here, but I can tell they're very astute. And it's actually, for me personally, an opportunity to hear from the rest of the folks from the other districts who are running for the other seats. It's a learning experience and a good listening experience. So I have served as supervisor for the last 8 years. And before that, worked for Hal Brown, the former supervisor, for 8 years. So I have a pretty good feel now for District 2 at the ground level and the county-wide issues, and have worked on a host of them. And I think that through the rest of this evening, I expect some sort of pointed questions around specific issues. So in terms of this opening statement, I'm going to keep it pretty high level. I pride myself on working across jurisdictional lines, working with community leaders from across the district, not taking things on just from a top-down approach, but working really collaboratively and across the district as issues demand. I've focused my efforts on public safety, wildfire prevention, flood prevention, traffic, housing, environmental protections, open space protections. I've also really dug into some of our tougher issues: homelessness, the opioid crisis, expanding mental health services, and taking these on, as I said, again, by building coalitions and working collaboratively. My priorities for the coming years are to continue moving forward and really pressing ahead on comprehensive countywide wildfire prevention, taking on emergency preparedness programs, and pressing ahead with the flood control work that we're doing in the Ross Valley, and then taking next steps on sea level rise, and that will have to be, of course, a countywide effort as well. I look forward to the rest of your questions tonight, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Jack?
Does this works?
Yep.
Thank you to the League of Voters, the audience, and my bride who's in the office, in the auditorium back there. Education and qualifications. I support a yes vote about the San Geronimo Golf Course. On December 7th, 1941, I was a third grade student at Red Hill and in other San Anselmo schools through the 8th grade. Then 4 years in East Bay high schools. 1951, I started Stanford, graduated in 1955. 1955 August, I was drafted and received an honorable discharge. In 1957, I served as an enlisted man in the U.S. Army. 1957, I entered the family home building business, which was closed in 1972. In 1969, I married Joan Ashley. In 1972, we moved to Las Vegas. In 1977, Joan was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and died in 1992. In 1978, I endowed the Joan Kennedy Professorship at Stanford. 2 Nobel laureates have held the chair, Dr. Kenneth Arrow and Dr. Joseph Stiglitz. Dr. Arrow was considered the preeminent economist in the 20th century. 1993, I married Lori Ann Sanders. Since 1995, we have lived and worked in the district and live at 32 Greenwood Bay Drive. In the Bay Area and Las Vegas, I created many jobs directly and indirectly through employing many subcontractors. Now, with your help, I propose to tackle the county pension plan problem and introduce zero-based budgeting. Thank you.
Alex, great. Yep.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm Stephanie Moulton Peters. I'm running for supervisor in District 3 in Southern Marin. Thank you to the League for hosting this evening and to all of you for coming out. We live in a remarkable place, and what we appreciate about it is due to thoughtful planning of those who came before us. Our beautiful coastline and bay, our trails, our open spaces, and our downtown historic cores are all due to careful planning. And now it's our turn to continue that tradition and plan ahead for the next 50 years. It's hard to imagine that world, but we need to get to work and make sure that we leave the generations to come with the beauty and wonder that we have. My key issues are wildfire preparedness, emergency communications and evacuation planning, flooding and sea level rise planning, better traffic coordination and transportation alternatives for those who don't want to drive, coordinating services for teens to prevent substance abuse, which is epidemic in our county, and offering services for seniors through the age-friendly program so that we support our seniors. And finally, responsive, transparent, and efficient government are hallmarks. I was elected in 2007 to the Mill Valley City Council. I served 3 terms, 3 times as mayor, and also chaired the Transportation Authority Board for 4 years. And these assignments have given me a very good understanding of local government and ways that a supervisor can be supportive of local solutions. I've loved serving my community. I want to continue, and I look forward to your questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill?
I'm not comfortable up here, but it's just the way it is. But I'm here because of what I've seen happening in the Mill Valley School District, and I think it's systemic throughout government, systemic throughout the state, and systemic throughout the country. I think that it's time that we stop recycling the people that are in power here now, and it's time to place people in that actually care about what's happening. And when I look at the school, I see that the people in power there don't care about the children. And that's the problem we're having right now, is that we have people in our government who don't actually care about the future of the children. And that means the global climatic weather change. That it means that we have to do something here in Marin about it. And that's one of the reasons I'm here. I'm here to ensure that we have accountability with our tax dollars, and that we need every receipt for every penny paid posted online so every citizen can look and see where that money was spent, where that money came from. That's number one. If we don't know what's happening with our tax dollars, then how can we be sure that things are getting done what we want done? The second thing is we need to look at some kind of an energy plan in Marin to encourage people to put solar panels on their roofs. We need to do something. We need to, in Marin, we need to do our part to minimize the impact on the global weather changes that are obviously here. We need plans for the wildfires that are going to come. We need plans for the flooding that's going to come and take out businesses and houses. That's why I'm here. I don't think this stuff is being done. And I don't think that people care enough about their children. And that's it. And so I think that I can help with that. That's why I'm here.
Thank you. Dennis?
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Dennis Rodoni, and I'm District 4 Supervisor. And I want to thank the League of Women Voters and College of Marin for having this event tonight. I live in Olema with my wife, Judy, have 2 grown adult children with 2 lovely grandchildren. I have a long family history in West Marin. My great-grandfather came to Olema 150 years ago to dairy farm. I went to West Marin schools, Tamales High School, then Chico State, where I got a degree in economics and a teaching credential. My work history started very early. I delivered the IJ for the Independent Journal newspaper on my bike. Later was a gas station attendant, and then later on was an apprentice carpenter working my way through college. I taught for 3.5 years, taught high school for 3.5 years, was a general contractor for 37, and in 2016 I was very, very fortunate to be elected supervisor for Marin County, entering my 4th term after spending 21 years on the North Marin Water Board. As you know and see the map below me, District 4 has a particular set of challenges. I have 15 towns and villages with a very diverse, both communities and geographically. My communities include the Canal of San Rafael and the farm workers in West Marin. My goals for 2020 are to focus on the census, making sure we get a complete count, to bring forth a single-use plastic ordinance for the unincorporated Marin, to continue to move forward building accessory dwelling units by reducing the fees and the time to get permits, passing the Fire Measure C, defeating Measure D in San Geronimo, and working on the GMP and National Park Service to get the long leases for our ranchers in West Marin. I'm happy to be here tonight and looking forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex? Can you, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, my name is Alex Easton Brown. I've been...
Can you move the microphone closer?
Closer?
Yep.
My name is Alex Easton Brown. I've lived in Lagunitas for 45 years, where I raised my family and built my house. And we're being interfered with by Spawn, which is sort of a fish cult. That's kind of how I look at it. Spawn, on whose board Dennis has been sitting, Spawn gets Supervisor Rodoni to try to acquire the San Geronimo Valley Golf Course in secret so they can kill it and turn it into a fish's spawning ground. All this without asking the people who live there, the people who got him elected. Never mind that the oceans are filthy, polluted with bits of plastic and sewage. Never mind that the oceans are heating up due to global warming. Fewer fish survive because of these outside forces, not because of the golf course. Spawn makes its money by grants and fees. $16 million since it started suing or threatening to sue the County of Marin and its tax-paying citizens. $16 million since it forced the county into a 3-year moratorium against building or remodeling any of the homes in the San Geronimo Valley, a moratorium forged in secrecy with no citizen input. Now, whose government is this? Is it Supervisor Rodoni's? Is it Spawn's? No way, this is our government, and we're taking it back. No more secret deals, no more corruption, and yes on Measure D.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask the questions. If you need me to repeat it, because there's a number of you on there, just let me know. And we're going to start with Jack Kenny for the first question, which is Measure C. And a number of things you've all mentioned up there, we're going to give you more opportunity to go deeper into them. So Measure C is the parcel tax to fund the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. Wildfires now present one of the greatest threats to life as we know it here, and Marin is a wildland fire area. So what specific new steps, no generalities please, will you pursue to mitigate this hazard and protect our families? So what 3 specific things would you do to minimize the danger?
Thank you. Is it allowed to ask the audience, if anybody here has read that measure? C is in Charlie. I'd like to see a show of hands. All right, thank you. So you be my jury and please correct me if I'm wrong in my facts. I live in Tiburon, and Tiburon and Belvedere city councils already have their program in place. The other municipalities don't. As an individual, I'm not in favor of a broad brush approach that this bill seems to take. You got a terrible problem in Mill Valley, Sausalito, not so much maybe in parts of San Rafael. So I think the idea is good. The only thing I would challenge is I'm a believer in having a sunset, say after 2 years, come back and do it. I am not in favor of the 10-year lifespan. Therefore, I am in favor of the idea, but I'd recommend we vote it down and have them bring it back next year. Thank you.
Stephanie?
Thank you. So I think wildfire is top of mind for all of us. After the 1989 earthquake, the city of Mill Valley realized that we were very much like the Oakland Hills, and 1989 wildfire. And so we organized ourselves to take steps to work on evacuations, make our roads open for emergency vehicles, and do vegetation clearing. We have been at this for decades, and we've even beefed up our efforts even more this year. And having done all that, we still realize there's more to do. Fire knows no boundaries, and so increased vegetation management, increased evacuation planning, and increased education and outreach and household evaluations are what's needed in this county on a county-wide effort.
Bill?
I think that the most important thing is to have an evacuation and a plan that includes a way of alarming people through their phones, through their computers, through the television. I think that's the most important thing is when there is a wildfire that's starting, that people can evacuate efficiently. So in order to evacuate, they have to actually know something's happening. So I think that's number one. And number two is maybe there needs to be some kind of a plan to reduce the amount of vegetation around people's houses, although I don't think that's going to help much when there's a gigantic wildfire happening because most of Marin is full of trees. So I think the most important thing is an evacuation plan. And that's, I think where I would start.
Okay, thank you. Dennis?
Thank you. So through a process since 2016, the county and fire districts have come to the conclusion that we have about $20 million of unmet needs when it comes to preparing for the next emergency and fires in particular. It's really important to recognize that this measure is additional dollars, and it actually says cannot replace existing budget line items. So the work that we're doing now will continue, but the truth of the matter is it's not enough. And we've identified $20 million of additional work we need to do. And so passing Measure C is one of the most important things that we can do this next election. So we can continue to prepare ourselves for emergencies. We can continue to work on evacuation routes and safe routes. We can continue to help seniors and people who have low income to do vegetation clearing and help everyone harden their homes. So this is a package of stuff that we need to do that we're unable to do unless we have additional funding. And there's no secret to that. We do a good job fighting fires, but we don't do a good job preparing how to avoid a fire or that emergency. And this is what Measure C is about. to go out and do the work that will help prepare us for that next major fire that may come through, and be better prepared for that, and better prepared citizens how to react to that and how to deal with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex?
Yeah, I live in the hills above Lagunitas, excuse me, and they're heavily wooded. I've been there 45 years. We've had several fires up on Mount Barnaby over the years. Last year, in the fall, early fall of last year, not this recent one, but the year before, there was a fire on Barnaby, and at about 5 o'clock in the evening, there was a wall of flame right across the little valley from my house. But the wind was blowing it away from my house, and the fire was not making a lot of moves to move downhill towards us. But the fire, the sheriffs came up and insisted that we evacuate, and we did. It was sort of a hassle. We didn't really have to. But this was caused by brush. And 10 years ago, there was a ballot measure, Measure A, which I actually wrote the argument against on the ballot, created a slush fund for the county. Part of it was to be brush clearing. And instead of spending the money on brush clearing, they went out and bought a bunch of new trucks and new uniforms and new signs for the trails and hired a bunch of people. My wife recently bumped her head, and I went over there to the church where she was, and there was an EMS and 12 firemen standing there. Now, that's a lot of firemen for an injury. They could have been doing some brush clearing, maybe not then, but overall.
Thank you. Katie?
Yeah, our wildfire threat is easily the most urgent need of our county to address. We have, the North Bay fires taught us a lot. Mostly they taught us that wildfire knows no boundaries, and they also taught us that there's things that we could be doing if we do it at a county-wide level and comprehensively to really reduce our risk. And that's what Measure C is all about. I worked with a group, I brought together a group of community leaders from across the county under sort of the heading of Marin Ready Together. And the idea was to start educating local leaders around the necessity that every community step up and do the kind of landscape work, home hardening, and emergency preparedness that across the county. One, if it really is going to take us all working on this, and I think Measure C actually is extremely well crafted. It's informed by the professional firefighters who learned lessons from the North Bay fires and others. It has been marched around the county and gained a lot of community input, and it will help us meet our county-wide needs, regional needs, but also allow some local flexibility to address specific problems within our own communities. It is absolutely critical that we pass Measure C, put that money to work implementing the Marin County Wildfire JPA.
Great. Thank you. Okay, the next question, we're going to start with Stephanie. And let's talk about PG&E power outages. So, what will you do, if anything, to make PG&E pay for the blackout they caused? Do you actually think that they should pay anything? And if you can tie cell phone reception into that response at all, that would be great. That's it.
So thank you for that question. Look, it's clear that the PG&E power outages were a very blunt instrument trying to head off wildfires. And it made it a couple of things very clear. PG&E needs to upgrade its equipment to more surgically isolate those areas that are in the greatest danger. There's no need to take everyone out in these circumstances. Additionally, there were people who are on life support equipment, and not enough was done to prepare for that. So I think putting the pressure on the CPUC, the county, I know, has taken a position, very strong position against PG&E's behavior, and I think we need to keep the pressure on. So in terms of the communications, that is another issue that also needs state involvement by the PUC and the California Energy Commission to have the cable companies provide the backup power that they're supposed to keep the communications, the cell phone towers working, or provide with batteries, or provide alternatives. So a lot to do. Lot to do on their end, lot to do on the citizen preparedness end, too. I'll just say that.
Okay, Bill?
PG&E should be severely punished, especially the executives that allowed the stock buybacks, which probably is where the money went, where they were supposed to buy the equipment. Instead, they probably bought back their stock and enriched themselves, so the equipment degraded over a period of decades, probably is the cause of these fires. But nobody's going to talk about that. I think that they shouldn't be publicly traded. They shouldn't be able to buy back their stock. That's ridiculous. I think that there should be laws to prevent that in California. And I think that we should take away their infrastructure. And, you know, we should take ownership of that and maybe produce our own electricity. Maybe we should incentivize solarizing all the households in Marin by making it a free permitting process. Maybe those solar power systems can help power the cell towers when there's a cell phone outage. Maybe they can be tied into that somehow. You know, those are some ideas that I've come up with, but I definitely think PG&E needs to be punished somehow, and I think those executives that's who we should be going after, is those people that were greedy that caused these problems. And then can come up with our own solutions. That's it.
Thank you. Dennis?
So thank you for the question. The PSPSs that we experienced taught us a lot. One of the things I think we need to recognize is that it's the state of California and the PUC that needs to hold PG&E accountable. And so as local electeds, we need to work with our state electeds to make sure that they hold PG&E accountable at the state assembly and senate. Having said that, the county learned a lot in the PSPSs, and now we're preparing all our buildings, county buildings, to be able to convert them to generators very quickly. We also are demanding of PG&E that they respond to the losses that we occurred during the PSPSs, the county losses that we experienced, and hopefully they will try and compensate us. We also are requiring them to help us provide this infrastructure we need to be in a PSPS. They've said that this may go on for 10 years. It may not be as major a blackout as we experienced where 90+% of Marin's out of power, but the leadership of PG&E has said this will continue for a while and up to 10 years. And what will happen is they'll continue to improve their lines, they'll continue to harden their wires, they'll continue to replace their poles, and they'll continue to do vegetation management, which will lessen that impact, but it's not going to go away. So preparing for it, making sure our most vulnerable residents are prepared for it is all part of our emergency plan. And we really learned a lot in the last few years with the type of emergencies that aren't what we always expect them to be.
Thank you. Alex?
Yeah, I agree with Dennis. It's really the state's job, and they have the ability to deal with this. Otherwise, pretty much everything he said I'm in agreement with.
Okay.
If I have some time, can I use it to finish something?
Well, as long as...
I'll keep talking. Okay, the firefighter lobby has used the Sonoma wildfires to scare us into putting Measure C on the ballot. Yeah, the firefighters are my heroes too, but this is bad proposition. It creates a whole new level of bureaucracy.
I think, yeah, I'm sorry. I think we're going to just stick with like the questions at the time, but you'll have time in your closing arguments if that's a point you really want to make. Closing arguments, we're not in law. Your closing remarks, you could add it to that. Katie?
I do think we need to hold PG&E accountable and responsible for what's happened, but I also think at the same time as the governor is pressing on that and we're supporting his efforts, we also have to work equally as hard, if not more hard, to accelerate the hardening of the grid and the smartening of the grid. That's really going to be key. This threat's not going away. It's going to get worse, in fact. We know the grid has to get smarter, but we also can't have the kind of broad spread outages that we had last year, and that has a lot to do with a not very smart grid and also the configuration here in Marin County. Associated with that is the telecommunications piece, which was a really huge wake-up call for all of us. We had been told by the telecommunications companies that they were fine, they had backup power, or they felt they'd be fine even with the extended power outage. Obviously not true. Luckily, we have a really strong representation at the state, and Senator McGuire, being one of them, actually has a bill that's now moving. It's in the House, or it's in the Assembly. It's moved through the Senate, that would require a minimum of 72-hour backup power for telecommunications. So that's going to be really key. On the other hand, I'm not sure that they can make that happen overnight, and it may not be a foolproof answer to our telecommunications needs. So it's going to be critical that while we're dealing with all these issues, we up our emergency preparedness, our community readiness. Our neighborhoods need to be ready, and certainly at the government level and the public agency level, we need to be working as hard as we can to support our most vulnerable during a power outage of any sort.
Thank you. Jack.
My response is to lobby the two sitting supervisors. I have a suggestion that we can implement next week. If you want to solve the problem, let's do it for free. That's a big word. And the idea is to take the bright young kids at Tamalpais, the juniors and seniors, Redwood, San Marin, etc., and have them do a study. All it takes is a smart kid with a little HP, and you can do wonders with your numbers. So we'll have them rejigger the grid. Those guys that are the executives up at PG&E are a bunch of morons. The juniors and seniors in high school could do better and get this on their college resume that I helped rejigger PG&E in Marin County, and it would look pretty good when you're applying to school. So my efforts are to lobby you, young lady, to lobby you over there, to see if you can do something like that. And then if you extend this idea, you get rid of all these $100,000 or $300,000 studies, and you have the kids set up a shadow government, and they get that resume with an upbeat ending. Thank you.
Thank you. Getting the youth involved. Okay, we're going to start with Bill on the next one.
Oh, no.
We're going to talk about pension deficits.
Say that again?
Pension deficits. So the city and the county's unfunded pension deficit is consuming ever more money every year. I think supervisors get a pension. So, and pension reform is stalled. So what steps would you commit to take as a supervisor to address the debts, and how will you change the city or county's involvement in the present public employee pension system?
Well, first of all, we need to get a handle on the budgets, and that is for the public to microscopically look at the budgets, for us to see the expenditures. What they present now in a budget are these line items, which is basically like looking at a house but not being able to go inside the house and see the rooms and see the furniture and see anything, because they hide that from us. And they just tell us it's a house. So that's the first problem, is actually seeing what's in the budget. I pull out line items like Purple Wine, this is a school district, Purple Wine Bar, McManus Pub, Tahoe Resort, 5-yacht Pure Luxury Hotel, Aqua Hotel, CI. This is the way they're spending our tax dollars at the school district level. So what are they doing with our tax dollars countywide? We need to be able to see that. That's the first thing. And that is the biggest problem, I think. The pensions, I think, have to be renegotiated with people that are vested. They're going to have to renegotiate, or it's just going to be a disaster. That's what has to happen. And you can't exclude people that are coming in. You have to allow them to get into the same program. In order for them to do that, you can't just cut them off and say no more pensions. How fair is that? You need to deal with the people that are vested and say you're going to have to renegotiate, and that's probably the only way to do it.
Thank you. Dennis?
So thank you for the pension question, and I would first just say in a minute and a half, you couldn't do this justice, but it's important to remember that the county system is under MSERA, and that when we talk about pensions, I talk about the county's portion of MSERA, because most people don't understand there's different pension programs, including the state retirement system. The county MSERA program is doing very well. It's 88% funded. It's had a 9% average return over the last 2 years. And so we actually have a $10 million pension stabilization fund that we've set aside so we can reduce the impacts to our budgets should the return get reduced. I also think that it's important that we look at reducing the expected rate of return probably another 0.25% to be reasonable, that we can't always achieve these high levels. And we did that a year or so ago. We need to do it again and reduce it even more to be realistic. The impact of a 0.25% reduction on our budget is $2 million on a $500 million budget. It's not a huge impact to reduce that 0.25%, and the county is doing really well. We have big challenges, but as our employees move to the PEPRA system, and we're at 25% now at the county that's in the new retirement system. As that starts happening over the next 15 to 20 years, we're even going to be in better shape because actually the retirement that our new employees are getting is reduced and they're paying for a lot of it.
Thank you, Alex.
What was the question?
So the question was for our pensions, right? What steps will you take to commit to, as a supervisor, to address the debts, and how would you change the city or county's involvement in the present public employee pension system?
Well, I think we have to overturn the California rule. The California rule protects pensions right now, but there's a good chance that it might be overturned by the state Supreme Court. We should not be hiring more and more people at high salaries until we can iron out this pension thing to begin with, because we're just digging ourselves deeper and deeper in the hole.
Thank you. Katie?
Yeah, thank you for asking the question. So I think it's really important that for any public agency, any private agency as well, that's promised an employee a certain pension or retirement package, that we keep that promise. The law requires that we do it, but I also think it's the right thing to do. So promises made must be kept. So the key has always been for the county, and the county has been looking at its pension debt well before this was on the radar of the general public, was to work with your employee groups to look where you have opportunities to, one, reduce the kinds of things that raise the pension liability, like pension spiking, or lowering, or where can you create a lower benefit tier to address going forward. So the county is a bit ahead of most agencies. We are in good shape. As Dennis said, we're 88% funded at this point, and we have a plan that will have us actually peaking on our pension payments. I think I just asked Matthew, our CEO, the other day, in 5 to 7 years. So we've kind of got our arms around our pension liability, but that doesn't mean that we can't do more. And I also think it's critically important that we include our employees in this conversation, because once we have a downturn in the economy, things get more difficult, and we need to make sure our employees understand our financial constraints so that when we negotiate their contracts, we have them be part of the solution. Thanks.
Thank you. Jack?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm in this race because of the pension plan problem, but I propose to tackle it from two areas. The first is, I don't think everybody necessarily has to have a pension, because pensions have been manipulated. So what happened was, if someone was in the old days for 20 years, that's 80 quarters, you had to work that to get your pension. Then they come along and the boss says, well, Sammy, you've been a good guy. We'll change that to your last 3 years. And then it's their last year. Well, mathematically, that's impossible for you to have paid in enough money. San Francisco, you got to work 5 years and you're fully vested in health. So my idea is you give them a choice. You cut it off, and from here forward, they get wages, money, and you get health care, no pension plan. You go to a 401k IRA. The proof of the pudding here is in the Smart Train gang. When they first came along with their pension plan, it was so bad it was rejected offhand. Now, how'd they solve it? They all have 401ks. So if you're the money manager, you can predict what you're putting in to the 401k, but you've got an open-ended deal. Now, in the last 15 seconds, you've got all these entities all over the place, all working hard, but I can say to the people that are elected now and the ones that are not in this room, for the past 10, 12 years, it was below the skyline. I am happy to see it above the skyline.
Thank you. Stephanie?
So I think Supervisor Rice and Rodoni have presented the current scene in the county. The county of Marin is not the same as the state of California, which has a 60% unfunded, they are 60% paid up towards their liability, and the county is close to 90%. So that's hugely different, and it is because of the planning and foresight that the county showed before. Many cities in Marin County, including my own, Mill Valley, have taken similar steps. So we've paid in annually, the annual payments. We've set up these buffer accounts, if you will, or these pension trust funds to stabilize during the peaks that's expected in the next 5 to 7 years. So we've got this handled on the back end. On the front end, we're working through with new employees, PEPRA. As Supervisor Rodoni said, those benefits are reduced. So this is an issue that we're going to manage our way through. I think the county CAO is known for being very tight-fisted, and so the budget adjustments that may need to be made, I'm sure will happen. And so I think we just need to work the plan that's been established and not confuse ourselves with the state of California, which has a much larger pension issue that they're working through.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, we're going to start with Dennis, and I did not plan this question to start with Dennis, but Measure D. So voter approval is required for the change in primary use of San Geronimo Golf Course. And so twofold. What do you see as the future of the property if Measure D passes? And do you think it's appropriate for the county to vote on a local plan?
So thank you very much for the question. The Measure D initiative is a voter initiative that the county's placed on the ballot. And what this measure does, if it's successful and passes, it restricts the private property owner, Trust for Public Land, in what they can do with their property. It basically says that they must use it as a golf course. It doesn't say that they have to. They can refuse to use it as a golf course, but it says you must use it as a golf course as the only use. It doesn't mean we can't have other uses there, or they can't have other uses there. What it means is every time you want to do a new use, you have to go to all the counties in Marin, all the citizens in Marin to get it approved. That's cumbersome, that's timely, and it will actually cost the county money doing elections. If it fails to pass, then the planning process can continue, and there's plenty of opportunities to work with TPL, who is quite capable of keeping the property for as long as they need to. Their plan is to restore the creeks, open it up for the public. The county could have a part in that if the community planning process asks the county to take a part in that. One of the things that's often talked about is it was identified as a potential site for a fire headquarters in a study about 10 or 12 years ago. It is a suitable site for that, but it will have to be through the planning process that that's determined that that is a suitable use. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex?
Measure D stands for democracy. All it does is ask that the voters approve anything that the supervisors want to rezone in this county, because all it takes is 3 supervisors to change the zoning anywhere in the county. In the case of the San Geronimo Valley, you could stick a hotel or even a casino in there, and all that's very possible. You see, the Indians just gave $1 million for Smart Trade. I've heard that they are looking at Marin County as a next destination. So Dennis wanted to pay $3 million more for the golf course than it was worth, and so now the present owners are stuck with a high purchase price. If Measure D passes, they're going to have to, if they want to get out from under it, they're going to have to find somebody to take it over, and they'll probably suffer a loss. But they rushed into this and took part in a lot of secret meetings over a period of 6 months that did not involve the taxpayers, and this is what they get for secrecy and trying to pull one over our eyes.
Katie?
So my fear is, if Measure D passes, my fear is actually that that property will remain fallow. It is going to be difficult without really strong community planning process that is inclusive, that does listen to what the local community and larger community wants to do with that property, to come up with what to do with, with such a special piece of land. Measure D is threatening not only for the future of that, of San Geronimo Golf Course in terms of use, but it's also threatening in terms of what might happen, what could happen with other properties in the future across the county. Does it make sense for a parcel anywhere to be controlled in terms of use by a vote by the entire county? Can this county, can we as voters agree on a development? I find it difficult to think that anything constructive could come out of leaving that property with no clear direction and no clear community consensus about what should happen to it. TPL has promised a community process to determine a future use of that property, and there's so much opportunity there, so many good things could happen there. So I look forward to the vote of the people, seeing the wisdom of allowing that community process to go forward and Measure D to fail, frankly, to allow that to happen, and then a visioning for something beautiful in the San Geronimo Valley.
Thank you, Jack.
In my opening statement, I said I support a yes vote on the San Geronimo Golf Course. Your question doesn't quite ask how did we get here. So what has been said about going forward wouldn't ever have to have been said if they hadn't gotten themselves into this pickle. They're adding 157 acres of open space to 57% of Marin County in open space. And they got rid of anywhere 50, 60 jobs. So the group that took it over is stuck with it. 2 lawsuits resulted that the county lost, but the boogeyman in this deal was a county attorney. I wasn't in the room when he gave advice to the sitting supervisors. They wouldn't know that what he was telling them wasn't correct. You only have my word for it, but when I talked to him one-on-one, he said to me, oh, this is the first time it's ever been tried in the state. So they get 4 of the supervisors to go along, 1 abstains, and then you get this brouhaha. And the citizens go out with a recall. It's legal. We don't make the rules. We have to play by those on the vote, but that's why we're here. And in my opinion, I'm a yes vote. Go back to see if it's going to be a golf course, because you don't need another 157 acres when 57% of Marin County is in open space. And that's my speech.
Stephanie.
Thank you. So the San Geronimo Golf Course is quite far away from Southern Marin, but it is a significant issue for Southern Marin voters. For this reason, I know how much work it takes to develop a general plan. The City of Mill Valley did that, and similar to that are the community plans in the unincorporated area. I would not want county voters voting on what happens in Mill Valley in terms of our general plan, and therefore I do not believe that it's appropriate for county-wide votes on local community plans. These plans are developed by the local residents and stakeholders, and they ought to be honored as separate from the rest of the county. So I don't endorse a county-wide vote at all. I do think that a community-wide planning process such as Supervisor Rice described, that is inclusive and open to all the stakeholders and looks at all the opportunities. There's wonderful opportunities there. These processes are hard. I know that. They take time to go through a community process, but the results can be fabulous, and I would expect nothing less out in West Marin. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill?
I can't say I know what Measure D is or what's going on out there. I'm not really, can you enlighten me a little bit of exactly what Measure D is?
Not me, but
No, anyway.
probably Dennis can.
I'm for more open space, or at least protecting the open space that we have. One of my concerns is that the open space is going to be whittled away over time by developers. That's all I can say as my input on this. I don't know what Measure D is. I don't I understand that it sounds like they're going to allow all the voters to decide on what to do with that piece of property. Is that about right? So anyway, I just think that we need to protect our open space, and that's, you know, where I stand on it, but I don't know what Measure D is, so I'm honest about that.
Okay, Alex, we're going to start with you for this one. What do you believe is the most important thing that Marin can do to mitigate our greenhouse emissions?
I've been after the county for a long time to start hiring locally. Every time the county wants to fill a job, they have this criteria for the best and the brightest, so they look internationally to try to fill these jobs. If they would just hire people from Marin County, and there's plenty of talent in Marin County, we wouldn't have to worry about workforce housing. We wouldn't have to worry about these people commuting into the county. So hiring locally, hiring Marin, I think it would be a real good start. Secondly, we have to acknowledge that the SMART train has been a bust. It has not affected the traffic at all on Highway 101. It's not going to. That right-of-way would have been a lot better used for buses, moving people back and forth with a lot more flexibility than they have now with their inflexible schedules and their stations. The SMART train was started by a group of well-connected politicians and businessmen who had the rights to a broken-down railroad in Mendocino. You know, why not get the public to pay for a brand-new, shiny new rails and bridges by running it into Marin, make it a SMART train? And after sucking millions of dollars out of our pockets, now they want to present us with Measure I, Measure I, which would renew the sales tax 9 years before it expires. Why 9 years before? Because they know that in another year or so, they wouldn't get the voters to go along with it.
Thank you. Katie?
Yeah, the two areas we need to focus on in Marin County and everywhere are transportation and the built environment. So we need to work as hard as we can, pulling all the levers we can at the local level, at the city level, at the county level, leveraging what influence we have with regional government and the private sector to transition our auto fleet, our personal vehicle fleet, and also public transportation to EVs. It's absolutely critical. And the way local government can do that is by supporting the build out of our EV charging grid, and then also trying to couple incentive programs and education programs to help folks make a choice to lean to EVs and actually act on it. Transportation is absolutely critical. The next big tranche is our built environment, and that's both with regards to new construction and modifying existing construction, existing residential. We need to electrify we need to get off of natural gas and move to electricity-powered heat and appliances. And then Marin County needs to continue to lead like it did with the establishment of Marin Clean Energy and so many other programs on innovation, on engaging the community, and on really visioning forward as local government as to what we can do to promote transitioning off of carbon completely. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack?
From a practical standpoint...
Wait, you need the microphone.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Sorry, Jack.
Thank you. From a practical standpoint, I think we can do little things that'll all add up. Going back to my idea of the kids at high school doing studies, they could do studies on traffic lights. We live at right down from 101 where you turn off to Mill Valley and you turn off to Tiburon. It's just been terrible for the last couple of years. Caltrans finally came around and they've improved the lights, but they're still not right. So the other day I'm driving through downtown San Rafael, and with the train coming through there, they've got all sorts of pollution. The cars are stopped. 45 miles an hour is the least pollution that a car emits. So what you want to do is get the kids from San Rafael High to go over there to the city of San Rafael, do a study, and get those cars moving on 5th, because when you get down off of Lincoln to 5th to 4th, you're stuck there for 10 minutes, and that's just going bloop, bloop, bloop. Well, you can't see carbon monoxide because it's tasteless and colorless. But we need, we're all at the upper level, at high level, but let's do this right here. So every place you see where they're stacking up on the right, finally down at the Tiburon turnoff, they put another lane in to the right so you don't have to sit around for 20, 30 minutes, and we ought to go community by community with the kids doing the studies and see what they come back to get the guys at the Public Works Department to do something. Thank you.
Great. Stephanie?
So I'm going to tee off of, yes, get the kids started. So for 20 years, I've been involved in Safe Routes to School, which encouraged kids to walk and bike and carpool to school. And that was for their health, and it was to relieve congestion, and it also reduces greenhouse gases. We added the yellow school bus. That also reduces greenhouse gas. 60% of our greenhouse gases are tied to transportation. So anything we can do to shift the modes we take and what we drive for the trips where we need to drive. As TAM chair, I was instrumental working with Supervisor Rice and Supervisor Sears, MCE, and the Air Quality Management District to start Drive Clean Marin to incentivize driving electric or leasing electric. We also started the innovation workshops at TAM, and one of the byproducts of that when I was chair was the Marin Commutes program to incentivize taking transit. We need signal timing, we need transit advantage for buses and HOV hour extensions so that you can get there faster on transit. All of this will reduce transportation-related greenhouse gases. The built environment, as was said earlier, a crucial area. Better insulation on old homes, solar panels on new construction, and then going deep green with MCE is the way to tackle this head on.
Thank you. Bill?
The first thing you do when you want to make your house efficient is you insulate it. You buy efficient appliances. That's the very first thing you do. And then you put solar panels on your roof. So, that being said, you have to start by incentivizing stuff like telecommuting so people can work from home. How do we incentivize that? How do we get companies to allow people to do that? That would save a tremendous amount of energy. Solar initiatives, free solar permitting process for people to put solar panels on their roof. Some kind of incentive like a reduction in property tax for solarizing your roof. You could do all kinds of things to get people to do that. Develop a grid. You can't just say we're going to develop electric vehicles. You got to produce the electricity. And when you produce electricity, usually it's a power plant. A power plant involves a fuel source. And that fuel source, say diesel, is actually, you lose efficiency when you produce that power there and then put it into an electric car. You might as well have just put the diesel into a car and driven it. So you have to have a plan that looks at where the energy is being produced. So we need to produce it, obviously, with solar power, a renewable way to produce electricity. So that's the kind of stuff that needs to be looked at. We just can't say I'm buying an electric car if that electricity is produced in a power plant somewhere. You're actually polluting more. So, that's some of the things we need to look at. Incentivize biking. That's a great idea. Telecommuting. Getting people to use the public transport, that's in place. Those are the things that you would do to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases. Pretty much it.
Thank you. Dennis?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I can't emphasize enough that we have to improve our public transportation. We have to make it better, make it more consistent, and make it more affordable. And then we also have to electrify it, because if we don't do that, we're not going to meet our goals, our GHG goals. And then we need to encourage people to get out of their cars or to buy electric vehicles, to get on their bikes and to walk when convenient. All that needs to be done, and we need to work with all our communities to make sure that happens. Certainly the green building is really, really important, that our new buildings reflect all our green standards, but even our retrofitting our existing buildings are necessary. And we need to work as a county to make that easier to do by reducing permit fees, working with homeowners to make that happen. We need to build solar facilities in appropriate places. We need to have solar on every roof in Marin. Those kind of things are the only way we're going to start to address this major issue that we are falling behind on. And I think that certainly emphasizing again the public transportation side is really, really important. And it also is an equity issue. So many of our communities depend on public transportation. So by making it more convenient, more affordable, we're also meeting some of our equity goals too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next question will be the last question so that we can end on time. And we will start with Katie Rice for this one. And I know a couple of you have touched on this already, but in relation to affordable workforce housing, so everyone claims that they're for more affordable workforce housing, but few suggest specific locations or even specific actions. So specifically, where in your supervisorial district do you propose locating new multi-unit affordable housing, or do you?
I would be supportive of proposals that would, any proposal that might come forward for affordable housing within my district and in a parcel that's already zoned for multifamily housing. And I'd actually even be open to, with particular parcels, considering even creating upzoning or creating more density. I can think of one parcel that's in San Rafael that's a really good candidate potentially for higher density. It's really difficult. The county, our public agencies, our local government isn't in the business of developing housing. What we can do is try to create the environment that makes a project viable, and then the 90% of getting a project through is, of course, winning local support, and that, as we know from Victory Village and Fairfax and some other projects, can be a really difficult thing. So the county's been, I think, as proactive as we can in terms of using our Affordable Housing Trust monies to support workforce and affordable housing. Dennis will probably talk about the Coast Guard station property that we've been involved in and invested in, and then also really working ahead of the state on this, on ADU and JDU, accessory dwelling unit or second unit zoning and incentive programs to try to develop that piece of the housing, the spectrum of housing. So we as communities, I do think, have a responsibility to try to create a broad spectrum of housing for everyone in the community, and I don't think we've done enough to date.
Thank you. Jack?
Well, as a developer, I was always for higher densities. That's kind of in my genes. What I would do, and I'm going to lobby this young lady here and the contractor over there. I sell insurance. If you really want to do low-cost housing, I have a solution, but I'll tell you what we did. Years ago, when we were building Terra Linda, we could sell a lot for $15,000 American, and we could make $7,000 profit. Prop 13 comes along, it's a new ball field. So now it's close to $200,000 for a lot before you get started. Water, sewer, everything else, they can figure out the tax. So let's say we're going to take care of the homeless. I'm lobbying you now, and I'm lobbying the contractor over here. You forgive all the $200,000 worth of fees that go to the municipalities if you want low-cost housing. That's where you start. But then the result of that is you're taking a little bit of money away from the county, so otherwise they just talk and it goes on and on and on. But that's the only way to do it, is to get rid of the high costs and develop cheap lots, or lower cost lots, and higher density. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Great. So one of the biggest challenges in Marin County is the cost of land here, and that makes developing affordable housing difficult. However, Marin County and our small cities and towns were the original transit-oriented development, with the town historic center built on the rail lines of the old Northwestern Pacific. We can work collaboratively with the cities and the county itself to do small infill housing as already exists in these downtown cores, small duplexes, small apartments, and fourplexes. I support development on our transit corridors, again, appropriately sized and located. Miller Avenue in Mill Valley happens to be an example of that. That can be done well. There are some studies we've done in Mill Valley as part of our Affordable Housing Task Force that would indicate that the North Bay may be able to win grant funding from the state to develop affordable housing more easily than we thought. So it's an early indication, but we may compete very well in some of these. And that would allow us to create affordable housing projects, which is really what we need, more than inclusionary. We just need flat out affordable. In the shorter term, I think we need to pay attention to our vacation rental policies in the counties and the cities. This often takes housing off the market. If you're a homeowner and you want to rent out a room, fine. If you're going to do the whole house constantly, I think that's an issue.
Thank you. Bill?
I think that, I don't know if building big units is the solution, because that's going to concentrate traffic, for example. It's going to create bottlenecks and cause traffic. I think maybe a plan to spread, like having incentives to build a second unit, rezone some areas, build second units. You would have a free permit process to do that, to build the second unit. You would have a free hookup process, and you would have a reduction in your property taxes to incentivize it. You can then, as payment, you would have to have your home, your second unit as a Section 8 housing for a period of time. You would have to allow people to have that at a reduced rate for a period of time. This would have the effect of spreading the units all over the entire county, so the traffic increases would actually, it would be spread out throughout the whole county and not just concentrated in one area with a giant unit somewhere. I think that's might be a good approach. That's it.
Dennis?
So certainly Marin's largest challenge is around housing, especially workforce housing. The county's policy of acquiring existing affordable housing has been successful. We've done it all over the county, including acquiring 36 units out in West Marin at the Coast Guard Station. We've built around 68 ADUs in Marin by giving reduced fees and with the guarantee that they would be full-time rentals and not short-term rentals. That's a good program, but the reality is that we have to build where our transit is along our 101 corridor. I'm okay with more density there in the proper locations with local decision-making, but also we need to look, and I see Greg in the back room here from College of Marin, look at our school districts like College of Marin is doing and where the excess land is to build units and housing. And we need to build all sorts of houses, rental, multi-unit, single family, so there can be a transition of families and people into different housing. Certainly senior housing is really an opportunity. I look at that as an opportunity because it puts our seniors in a safe place that they can live their life longer independently, and it frees up a single family dwelling somewhere in the market. So that's a good thing. So I think that there's a lot of work to do, but I'm convinced we won't build ourselves out of this. There's no solution by building ourselves out. We have to be creative and be smart with our choices. Thank you.
Great. Thank you to all of our candidates tonight. Who's not here? So that concludes the question portion of the forum. So before the candidates make their closing statements, here's some useful information about the election. Election day is Tuesday, March 3rd, and February 3rd, the vote-by-mail ballots will be mailed. Early voting begins at the election office Monday through Friday from 8 to 4 at the Civic Center in room 121. February 18th is the last day to register to vote using a printed form. February 25th, the last day to request a vote-by-mail ballot. And March 6th, your vote-by-mail ballot has to be received at the election office and postmarked no later than March 3rd. So you can look for the League's Easy Voter Guide on the table in the back, or you can find it on our website, marinlwv.org. Okay, so now the candidates will make closing statements of about 1 minute each. We have a few extra seconds per person since we lost one. We will go in reverse order of the opening statements, so we'll start with Dennis Rodoni.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight. My opponents would make you think this is a one-issue race, and it's not. It's about my record, and I'm very proud of my accomplishments. Take a look at my website, dennisrodoni.com, and you'll see what I've done over the last 3 years. I'm endorsed by the Sierra Club, North Bay Labor Council, Professional Firefighters, and Marin Democratic Central Committee, and many top elected officials in Marin. I want to continue working on affordable housing, continue funding and paving our roads. I want to fund and reduce our pension liability. I want to address climate change and sea level rise. I want to eliminate veteran homelessness and address other homelessness individuals in the county through our home person care program, continue to protect our communities from crime and fires, improve our public transportation systems by making them more accessible and more affordable, and budget within our means, balancing our budget and saving for the future needs and economic downturn that we might all face. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill?
I think we need, first of all, transparency in our budgets. We need to see where every penny is spent. We need every receipt posted online. We need to know that first before we can make any decisions, because how can you trust what's going to happen with the tax dollars if you don't know what's really happening to them? So I think that's the first thing that needs to happen. We need an energy plan in Marin. We need to incentivize solar power. We need to incentivize alternative sources of energy. We need to look at that. It should be a free process to do that, to encourage people to do that. There should be a reduction in property taxes so people can do that. And I think Marin has a responsibility to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases we have. I think that we need to enforce the rules of the Brown Act. That's one of the things I haven't brought up, which is a Meetings Act, which is that isn't being followed. People are skirting the law that are in these elected positions. Stop. Okay.
Thank you. Stephanie? Goes by fast.
Thank you again to the League of Women Voters and the College of Marin. As a 3-time mayor and 4-year chair of the Transportation Authority, I have a track record of accomplishment and have gained a real perspective on how a supervisor can be supportive of our local communities. I work with groups. I'm a big tent person. I bring everybody in the tent and seek solutions, and we work together to put them in place. With a degree from Stanford in environmental policy and work professionally in environmental protection, I have a real dedication to our open space and addressing climate change head-on for our kids. I want to continue working to address the many key issues and challenges that face us: wildfire preparedness, flooding, climate change and sea level rise, traffic and alternative transportation. I've loved serving our community. I've been endorsed by Congressman Jared Huffman, Senator Mike McGuire, Assemblyman Mark Levine, supervisors, and many, many electeds in Southern Marin. I ask for your vote on March 3rd.
Thank you. Jack?
Thank to the Women League of Voters, the College of Marin. When I was around here, it was a JC. I'm hoping to talk to the other supervisors and, if elected, work very hard to solve the pension problem. If we solve that, we'll probably free up a lot of the money that we need to do the things they're talking about that they don't have the money for. It's probably 6, maybe 8% of the budget is strangled that goes off to debt reduction. And if that's freed up, we can do a lot of the things that we would all like to see done. So to me, that is money. You follow the trail. My idea of hiring people without pension plans will be proved if you put this out there and they sign up. The proof will be in the pudding. If they show up and will work for those 2 items without a pension or then a 401k, my program will work. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie?
Yeah, thank you to League of Women Voters and to the folks who came tonight. So I guess I want to close with, I really enjoy this job. It's extremely challenging at times, but it's always interesting. The people in the community and the subject matter are what make it a day-to-day. Every day is a little different, a little new. Every day is another challenge, and every day I get to have a conversation with someone I haven't had with before. I learn something new, and I take that with me and apply it where I can in this work. It's really been an honor to serve as supervisor these past 8 years. I grew up in Marin County. I raised my 3 children here. I know what makes this county so special, and I work hard every day to ensure it remains so. My priorities for the coming years are moving forward with comprehensive countywide wildfire prevention and emergency preparedness, pressing ahead on flood control for the Ross Valley, and taking next steps to address sea level rise. I'll continue to work to accelerate the transition to electric vehicles and carbon-free transportation while improving mobility for all transportation modes, simultaneously reducing traffic congestion and greenhouse gases.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us here.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. That concludes our forum. And, thank you to the CMCM for broadcasting and live streaming this event. It will be rebroadcast on Channel 30 and posted on YouTube. And the YouTube link will be available at our website. And thank you to College of Marin for hosting this event. Thanks to the candidates for participating, and to Robin Diedrich for timekeeping, Lynn Dooley and Sue Ream for question sorting, and to you for joining us tonight, and most importantly, for voting. Thank you.